The following program has been pre-recorded, so please don't call in at this time. If you wish to participate in the program, tune in at 5 p.m. every Wednesday for A Pause for Thought on Baton Rouge Community Radio. Good evening, fellow humans. This is Wayne Parker with A Pause for Thought on 96.9 FM Baton Rouge Community Radio here in Baton Rouge. We are a live call-in show. Yes, you can call in, and you are encouraged to do so and share your thoughts and insights on whatever topic is being discussed this evening. The only rule is that you state your point as an opinion or suggestion in a respectful manner. Anyone who tries to turn this into a rant show will be made to go away. And tonight we have a guest with us, Jennifer Mayer. She is the recruitment coordinator for the Baton Rouge Court-Appointed Special Advocates Association, or CASA. I'll use CASA, but I'll explain what it means periodically throughout the show. Okay, Jennifer? How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing just great. And CASA is a nonprofit organization that provides court-appointed adult advocates for children to represent the children's interests in juvenile court or child protection hearings, right?
That's correct.
Okay, and before we move on to this, I need to take care of something I've already forgotten. You can call in, as I said, call in 343-9927, 343-9927. If you need to dial the area code, then just dial 225-343-9927. Okay, Jennifer, so what is a court-appointed special advocate for a child?
Well, our CASA volunteers, like you said, they speak up for the best interests of the children that we serve. CASA serves children and youth in the foster care system. So our kids, unfortunately, have been abused or neglected, and they have been brought into state custody for their own protection. So CASA has nothing to do with removing these children from their homes. That's up to the state. They will receive a report of abuse or neglect. They will investigate the situation and determine whether it is dangerous enough to merit removing the child.
The state will do that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Once the child enters foster care, the CASA program, again, it's court appointed. Our juvenile court judges appoint CASA to serve for that child's best interests.
Okay. You mentioned you represent the kids in juvenile. Can I call them kids?
Yes.
Okay. In juvenile court. Most people associate juvenile court with the kids got into trouble with the law.
Exactly. So that's one misconception, is that the children we serve are delinquents, but that's not the case. So juvenile court also sees hearings that have to do with what we call children in need of care. So that means these children are in foster care. The state is their parent, and it is up to the state to find a safe and permanent home for these kids. And so that's a children in need of care with the state. CASA, our program specifically serves East Baton Rouge Parish. That would be the 19th Judicial District Court. But there are other CASA programs throughout the state of Louisiana. So while juvenile court does have hearings for criminal charges, they also hear foster care. And our CASA volunteers do not provide legal representation, nor do they replace a social worker. These kids already have those figures in their lives, but despite those individuals' best intentions, they have enormous caseloads. So that's where a CASA volunteer can really help, serving on typically one case at a time.
Okay, so they have these other people available to them, but obviously, yeah, and you say here in your fact sheet that you try to catch the kids to prevent them from falling through the cracks of an overloaded and underfunded system. Really, you know, that's a problem for adults. If an adult gets into that system, you know, the criminal justice system anyway, and doesn't have good representation, they could get lost too. And if it can happen to an adult, I'm sure it can happen to a child with no one to help them.
Right. So the CASA volunteer truly serves as a fact finder. So the kids, again, they already have an attorney, but up until recently, there was probably one attorney who saw the bulk of the cases. And last year, we served 330 children. Not one attorney for all of them, but for the grand majority. So that's one attorney and hundreds of kids. The caseworkers, I'm not exactly sure how many of them there are. I don't have a caseload myself, but they probably have a caseload, let's say, 30 kids or so. And the state not only is charged with working with the child, but they're charged with rehabilitating the family. Whereas the CASA volunteer's sole focus is on the child's best interests. So the CASA is not, again, providing legal representation, nor are they replacing the social worker. What they can do, since they only serve on one case at a time, is they can see the child on a regular basis. They can talk to everybody else involved in the child's life, whether it be foster parents, service providers, doctors, therapists, teachers, biological family, friends, and they can truly understand the child's history and current situation as well as their needs.
Do they establish any kind of a relationship with the child?
They do, absolutely. So the CASA volunteer ends up being the consistent, stable presence in the child's life. So the one who is always going to be there when they say they're going to be there. They help them. You know, we ask that our volunteers, on paper, we ask them to meet with the child at least once a month face-to-face. That's not to say our volunteers cannot do more than that. That's just kind of the on-paper
The minimum,
requirement,
right,
because
yeah.
these kids do have a lot of visits with different service providers and things like that their foster parents have to get them to. So that's why it's the once monthly commitment of seeing the child face-to-face. But, you know, if you have a teenager or a child who can talk on the phone, absolutely. Sometimes with the babies, of course, it's just that face-to-face visit is what matters, and talking with the foster parents.
Yeah.
But we ask that our volunteers see the child face-to-face at least once a month, so the child really can come to understand. It might take some time, but come to understand that the CASA volunteer really is there to help them.
That's an important commitment then for the people who volunteer.
It is.
And I'm sure you make that clear to people who do volunteer. But it does, I mean, you mentioned in your literature here that most of the volunteers work full-time. And it just seems like that's a huge time commitment. You also mentioned here, I wanted to ask you, they provide more thoroughly researched information on the cases. And I guess that's because the lawyers don't have time. They've got other cases.
Exactly. That's what I was saying about the CASA volunteer being a fact finder. Since our volunteers only serve typically on one case at a time, which could involve one child or a sibling group, they can work all of the contacts on that case, whereas the attorney or the social worker, again, despite their best intentions in getting into this work to make a difference, they have enormous caseloads, so they can't pay as much attention to the individual needs of each and every child, whereas the CASA volunteer, on one case at a time, they can. So what the CASA volunteer does is they gather all this information, they speak with the child, they understand the child's needs and the history. And even going further than that with the caseloads, we have 2 juvenile court judges in East Baton Rouge Parish who see all of these cases. So even more than the attorneys and the caseworkers, they have big caseloads too, and they're the ones making the big decisions.
Right.
So we're almost serving at the pleasure of the court and of the judge. The CASA volunteer submits a written report to the judge prior to each hearing, and the judge really does value CASA's voice. CASA was actually founded by a judge.
Okay.
So it really is a necessary voice to have someone who knows everything there is to know about the child and the child's situation.
Yeah, when I read that in your literature that they provide their own assessment and report to the judge, I'm sure that is very important. Does anybody review that from the is the volunteer on their own completely?
No, they're not on their own, and that's one thing we like to stress is no special background is required to do this work. You don't need to know anything about foster care. You don't need to know anything about the law, anything about child protection. We provide thorough training. And even after you complete training and accept a case, we have advocate supervisors on our staff, and based on their titles, they supervise our advocates.
Right.
So they each see a pool probably of 25 or so volunteers, and they do encourage the volunteers to take the lead on their cases because we don't want to become another entity where our supervisors are seeing all of these different cases and are also overloaded with the caseload. But they are there to assist and to review everything, so you're never alone in this work, and our advocate supervisors are there every step of the way to help you and making a plan and attend meetings with you and things like that and just help you brainstorm.
Okay, now you don't need a special background, you say, but you need to do a lot of, well, like you say, thoroughly researched. You need to research stuff. Is that primarily just calling, like you said, contacts and people who've been involved with the child before?
Yeah, it's a mixture. So on average, I'm not sure if we've covered this. On average, and again, like I said, it's an average. So some of our volunteers do more if they have the time, which is great. Some of them do less if they're getting their work done in under this time amount.
Yeah.
As long as they're getting their work done, we're not going to say anything. So on average, we find our volunteers spend approximately 10 to 15 hours a month on their work with CASA. So that's everything. That's talking to the different people in the child's life, meeting with the child, meeting with your supervisor, and those those talks can be over the phone, via email. As far as talking to the collaterals on the case,
What's a collateral?
that's everybody besides the child that's
Okay.
involved with the
I
case.
just
So that would be, of course, that would be the foster parent, biological family, the caseworker, the attorney I mentioned. You know, they're all, that's kind of CASA buzzword, we call them collaterals. Just
Sure.
anybody involved in the case that's not the
Not
child.
right? Okay.
So those meetings can take place in person, over the phone, via email. Sometimes there are meetings with child protection that you are asked to attend if you can make it. But a lot of that research and interviewing people, you can call people on the phone
Right.
and things like that.
Yeah, and I guess for me, if I were doing it, I would want to get to know the child as well as possible, because that gives you an extra insight into what might work for them or what they
Absolutely.
need. You know?
The primary focus is on the child's best interest. So the CASA volunteer is providing advocacy. The CASA is going to help make recommendations on the child's behalf. Anything to help that child reach a safe and permanent home with a forever family as quickly as possible is going to be what that CASA volunteer is pushing for. But that's not to say the volunteer can't also advocate for just a general service that the child might need,
Right.
just
right.
solely for the basic needs to be met.
Right. Okay. No, that's
And
good.
since the CASA is the one person in the child's life who's really there in all the different aspects of the child's life, they can know everything there is to know
Right.
that the child might need.
Yeah, it sounds like a great place to just be human, and
Yep.
and connect with another human being, a child. You say here, or you say in your literature, that currently 150 children are in foster care in East Baton Rouge Parish. Are there any waiting? I mean, what happens to kids whose parents abandon them and there's no foster home?
I think the Department of Children and Family Services has something in place for them as they're waiting for a foster home, sort of like an emergency type situation. But we are not part of that process. So once the child comes into foster care, we do not make the placement decision. We are there to advocate for the child's best interest. We receive notice when a child enters foster care, and while we can advocate, if we find that something's happening in the foster home and that we feel that the child might need to be moved for one reason or another, we can certainly advocate for that as CASA, but we don't ultimately make the decision on where the child is placed.
Right, of course. Let me pause here for a quick break. You're listening to A Pause for Thought on Baton Rouge Community Radio. We have Jennifer Mayer with the Baton Rouge Court-Appointed Special Advocates for Children Association. I added a little word there, but she's talking about that organization and how they help out children who have no family or anybody who is willing or able to help them get through the court systems and find a safe place and get what's needed or what they need. So if you want to call in, just dial 343-9927, 343-9927, and share your thoughts and ideas. And if you want to volunteer to be a representative, you can call in too. We need some contact information also for you guys too. Do you have that memorized? You want me to read it from here? Okay.
I have it.
Kind of thought you
So
would.
you can give us a call. That's 225-379-8598, or visit our website at casabr.org.
Okay. And looks like all you have to do is complete an application, attend a personal interview with your staff. I guess.
There are a few steps involved.
Oh, yeah.
So the very first step to becoming a CASA volunteer is to attend a brief orientation session. And that's where we have those applications available that you mentioned.
Okay.
And we have those just about every week.
And like you said, you get training and you get a period where you're mentored, so to speak, I guess, or on your first case you help out. 12 hours of in-service training after taking a case. Okay.
That's sort of like what I call continuing education for our CASA volunteers. So we'll have training sessions on issues that are kind of hot spots, related to the foster care system, maybe issues that our volunteers might be seeing the children facing, whether it's witnessing domestic violence, how to handle that, how to be able to kind of see if there's a problem, substance abuse, dealing with mental health issues, just as far as some of the parents we deal with, the biological parents, some of them have some issues with that. Working with teenagers, because at age 18, if a child hasn't reached a safe home, they do age out of the foster care system. So working with teenagers, education advocacy, the CASA volunteer can also go into the school setting and recommend services or anything that might be needed in school for the child's education.
Does
So
that happen often?
it does.
And the schools are receptive to it, I presume.
The CASA volunteers have a court order to go wherever involving the child and talk to people. and
Okay,
make
that doesn't
recommendations.
necessarily mean people, are receptive to the idea, but I would imagine most schools would be
Yes,
welcoming.
probably.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let's see. You guys have a fundraising event coming up, do you not?
We do.
When you tell us about that, it's July 24th is when it begins, right?
That's correct. So it's our annual Casas for Casa Playhouse fundraiser. Our title sponsor this year is Falk and Meek General Contractors. And what we do then is we raffle off a very luxurious children's playhouse. This year's playhouse, it's not a dollhouse, it is a child-sized playhouse. It's valued at $25,000.
How much space does it take up?
I don't have the dimensions on hand with me right now, and I'm not sure if they're quite yet listed on our website, but I will get them up soon. It is a large playhouse.
Yeah, I'm thinking.
I mean,
yeah.
I have to crouch. I am just a little over 5 feet. I have to crouch down to get into the door, but usually once I'm inside of them, I can stand up.
Jeez, does it come?
They're ready for electric. They have a window or wall unit air conditioning, so not your average playhouse. Like I said, this
No.
one's valued at $25,000.
Appliances, stove?
Oh, no, not
refrigerator?
quite
Oh,
that
okay.
much.
Oh, I just
But so
curious.
we have that on display for 3 weeks at the Mall of Louisiana. That's July 23rd through August the 14th. And the July 24th event you mentioned, that's our kickoff party. So it officially kicks off with Casa Fiesta. That's going to be at the Renaissance Hotel. We have Mexican cuisine, a silent auction, and music, and people are invited to come and bid on items while supporting Casa. We'll have a large, I'm not sure if it's going to be life-size, but we'll have a large photo of the Playhouse there. Since the Playhouse won't be on site at the Renaissance, it'll be at the mall with raffle tickets on sale.
And when did you say it would be there?
It's at the mall July 23rd, that's a Saturday, through August 14th,
Okay.
which is a Sunday. We also have a fun event that closes out the fundraiser on the final day of ticket sales. It's called Casa Kids Day. That's a free event for kids of all ages to come to the mall. Last chance again to buy raffle tickets. We have exhibitors from various organizations that have to do with health and wellness and safety. So lots of great information from those booths, and then we have entertainment and activities on the hour. So.
Cool. Sounds very informative
It is.
and beneficial. That sounds great. Yeah, and the silent auction. Where do you get the items that you auction off? Are they donations or?
Their donations, it runs the gamut, everything from, your gift cards here and there, whether it's to restaurants, spas, things like that, gift baskets. We have lots of local art and jewelry, I think some hotel stays and things like that, so it really does run the gamut.
Cool. No, that sounds good. And it's a raffle. Okay, that's an auction there for that stuff.
The Casa Fiesta, yes, does have an auction where
Right.
you would go bid on your different items and such, but the raffle for the Playhouse, it's $5 per ticket for a chance to win that $25,000 Playhouse. Falk and Meek General Contractors will deliver the Playhouse and assemble it to the winner within, I think it's 60 miles of the mall.
Wow. Okay. And you can buy tickets, buy as many as you want, right?
Yes.
Can you buy for somebody else with their permission?
Yes, I believe
Okay.
so.
Because, yeah, I don't need a playhouse, but I have neighbors with kids who help me a lot, with taking care of my
Yeah,
dogs.
you
and
might want to
whatnot,
let
so-
them know, because in the case
Yeah,
that
no,
they
I'll
do
get their
win
permission.
and they...
Yeah, they don't want you. Yeah, because that's why I
all of a
asked them
sudden, Falk and Meek will pull up with an enormous Playhouse, and they'll say, what's going on?
Yeah, and that's kind of bad manners, even though it's a nice thing, It might take up, we have small backyards where I live, so, if somebody showed up with a 200 square foot playhouse, that could be a bummer, Once again, you're listening to Wayne Parker and our guest, Jennifer Mayer, with court-appointed special advocates for children here in Baton Rouge on A Pause for Thought. Feel free to call in and share your thoughts and insights or ask your questions of Jennifer. 343-9927, 343-9927. Jennifer, I noticed on your website that you guys are putting out a special appeal for male volunteers.
That is correct.
Do you try to pair up by gender if you can, or why do you need men? Why do you need males?
So, among the children, it's pretty balanced, not exactly 50-50 male-female, but kind of teetering on that line.
Yeah.
Very, very close. But among our volunteers last year, so through the course of 2015, only, I think it's about 18% of our volunteers were male. And it really does help these boys and young men when they have a positive male influence in their lives.
Yes.
A lot of people look at a child advocacy organization and they might think that it's a woman's work, nurturing and things like that. But this is not child care. It's not going to read to a child on a Saturday, although, you can definitely do that in this work. But it is an advocacy role, and our volunteers need to be powerful and ready to get in there and speak up for the child. And just, again, having that positive male influence, because a lot of the boys and young men that we serve, not all of them, but a lot of them, either lack a male figure at all, or if they do have a male figure in their lives, it could potentially be a negative one.
Right, yeah.
So it is great when these boys and young men have a male CASA volunteer. So we're really pushing for more men to get involved.
Okay. Yeah, and that speaks again to how important commitment is to this program too. If you volunteer and go through the program, you want to make sure you follow through with it. You don't want to be yet another adult that lets the kid down.
Exactly. So we ask our volunteers, again, there's that average of 10 to 15 hours a month working on the case. We ask our volunteers to commit to at least a year. That's not to say that if your case is lasting longer than a year, on day number 366, we're going to call you and ask you if you want to continue. That's just so that you have it in mind that this is not the type of opportunity where you can do it for a few weeks and then decide you want to stop.
Right. Yeah.
So we, again, like you were just saying, we don't want to be a contributing factor to all of the different people that have been in and out of these kids' lives. Some cases don't last a full year. Some cases last longer than that, and we do have a lot of volunteers who, just based on the type of people that they are, they do want to see it through.
Have you ever attended any of these court proceedings?
I went to a court observation. So as part of your training as a CASA volunteer, and all of the CASA staff does this, it is a program where we go in the office, at our CASA office, we have most of the training, but at the end of it, there is a 2-hour juvenile court observation. So you have the chance to kind of be in there and see how it works prior to accepting your own case.
Okay, Mike, the reason I asked is because you mentioned that it could take a year or more to resolve a case. What kind of case would require that kind of time?
So it just depends. All of our kids are in very different situations. But the state, usually the first goal is going to be reunification with the biological family. There have been studies done, and I don't know the names of them, but that show that kids do grow best in their own homes with their own families. So the first goal a lot of the time is going to be to reunify. So mom and or dad, whoever's around, they're going to be given a case plan to follow, whether it's getting housing, suitable housing, getting a stable job, getting off of substances, yes, getting counseling, parenting classes, things like that. They're going to be given the opportunity to do the work that's needed to have their child or children safely return home.
Okay, and during that time...
And sometimes time is needed to do that.
Right, and so in the meantime, do they have repeated hearings, or does a judge periodically see the child and its advocate to check on things?
Typically, hearings are about every 6 months, and there will be status updates and things like that, and that's when the CASA volunteer submits that written report, is every time there's a hearing.
Okay, now I presume they get plenty of notice for that, right?
Yes.
Okay. I wanted to ask you, too, how do kids end up like this? Like, hey, you made one example, the parents suffer from substance abuse, or maybe they're abusing the kids physically or some other way, but
how do they end up in foster care?
Yeah, how do they end up there and having to need a CASA?
So there's always, of course, unfortunately, the abuse or neglect. But there are some other stories where it's not due to what we would say bad parenting. We had one case, there were 2 teenage sisters. They had a lovely family, but it was very tragic. Both of their parents passed away within the same year.
Wow.
And there was simply nowhere else for these girls to go. So they came into foster care because they didn't have anybody else anywhere to live. But it turned out wonderfully. I'm not sure on the status of the younger child, but the oldest, she did age out of foster care, but education was very important to her, and she ended up going out of state to college, and that's where she is now.
Well, good. A success story, huh?
So sometimes it's abuse or neglect, and sometimes it's simply that the child doesn't have anywhere to go. There's also a safe haven program for babies. A mother can bring her newborn, I can't remember the time frame, but can bring her newborn to a safe haven type of location, whether that's a hospital, fire department, police department, and surrender her parental rights. And a lot of those babies, since the parental rights have been surrendered, they'll get adopted a lot of the time.
Okay. Now, you mentioned here, too, that sometimes a child can remain adrift in foster care for months, even years. Is that simply because their parents are still trying to get their act together and things like that? Or
It could be that, but sometimes things get tied up. We do have some kids with mental health issues, some kids with severe developmental delays, so if it's not a parent issue, it's a matter of finding where would be a suitable home and a safe home and a permanent home for that child to go.
Okay, now you did say that although the advocates do go to juvenile court, it isn't the criminal court.
Correct.
Okay.
It's the same building, physical
Right,
space,
but I mean,
but
they're
the
not-
hearings are not criminal hearings. Like I said, they're child in need of care hearings.
Okay, but really, wouldn't a child who, and I'm not trying to criticize you guys, but it just occurred to me, wouldn't a child who got in trouble with the law and doesn't have decent parents to, or let me back up, who doesn't have parents who are capable of taking care of them, wouldn't they need an advocate too? Where do they fall?
You know, I'm not 100% sure about that. There has been a little bit of confusion, but CASA's role, we're in the Louisiana Children's Code, and our role is to speak up for the best interests of children in foster care and advocate on their behalf, and that's what we train our volunteers to do. Our volunteers are not trained to advocate for a child in a criminal hearing type setting.
Okay. Well, just to me, it just seemed like a good idea, but I can understand we can only do so much, and CASA committed to just handling the kids on the civil side, I guess, and the family side. So, but yeah, I would think, if I was a kid, I've known kids that had legal problems as minors, and it would have been great for them to have a caring adult to help them out, But that's the way it goes. We got a few minutes left. You can call in still, 343-9927, to talk to Jennifer Mayer of the Court-Appointed Special Advocates Association of Baton Rouge. Well, Jennifer, how did you get involved? It says here that no special background is required, but clearly you are the recruiter,
Yes.
volunteer recruiter for CASA. How did you get into that?
I have a background in nonprofit public relations type things, so while my title is recruitment coordinator, it involves a lot of community outreach, speaking engagements, radio shows such as this, getting the word out, trying to get articles in the paper and magazines. I'll be on TV a few times when we're getting ready for our Casas for Casa Playhouse fundraiser when that gets closer, so I was looking for a place where I could use PR to make a difference. And so while I'm not working directly with the children, I'm recruiting the volunteers that do. So that's how I...
Yeah, and like I said
this
before we
gig.
went on the air, you could probably dovetail into sales if you had to, and really you're doing sales for CASA right now, and it is a very important thing. I mean,
It is.
all products, and in a way you're selling a product, or a service, they require people to be out there beating the drum and getting people's attention and selling it.
Absolutely.
And you're hopefully getting more people to donate money and get involved, and also get some volunteers. But you specifically need male volunteers right now,
Yes,
right?
that is correct.
Because you have, you said it's about half and half though with
Pretty
boys
close
and
to
girls.
half and
Yeah.
half with the kids. And if you're listening right now and you feel you can't commit to the volunteer job, commit to spreading the word. Commit to attending our Casa Fiesta. There are other ways you can help in lieu of the advocacy. That is the biggest need, of course. But you can make it a point in the next week or two to tell 3 people about CASA, and spreading the word is important. You can even give me a call at CASA 225-379-8598 if your workplace or your civic association or the club that you're involved with, your Bible study, your church would be interested in having a speaker from CASA at a meeting.
That's a good idea. And I guess you are the speaker, right?
Yes, that would be me.
Okay. No, that's cool.
So there are other ways you can help.
Right, and of course there's the raffle for that great big playhouse that you can get for your neighbor if you don't want it in your backyard. People may not have kids. Do you get many retired people? This sounds like a really great thing for someone who's retired to do.
I meant to pull the stats for the age breakdown. We do have some retirees, and they may be the people, I said that 10 to 15 hour average. They might be the people on the top of that or over because they simply do have the time.
Right.
But we've got people In law school at LSU, we've got people who are young professionals. We have people who work full-time, have families of their own. So while it is a commitment that's more than just going every couple of weeks to read or whatever, that's the example I use, it is doable. We don't like to sugarcoat the commitment because, again, we don't want our volunteers to be a contributing factor to all
Right.
the different people in and out of these kids' lives. But 10 to 15 hours a month and just a willing heart, no special background.
Wonderful. Okay. Well, we've got to go. Jennifer Mayer with Court-Appointed Special Advocates for Children of Baton Rouge. I thank you for coming in and talking about your programs and stuff. You have a website, too. Your phone number is 379-8598. Your website is...
CASABR, so CASABR.org.
Okay. All right. You've been listening to Wayne Parker with a Pause for Thought and our guest, Jennifer Mayer with CASA this evening. This is Baton Rouge Community Radio, 96.9 FM in Baton Rouge, and thank you for listening. Have a good evening.